All right, we're back here with another installment in the MCU Rewatch Review series. After talking about, Shang-Chi a couple weeks ago, we talked about the Eternals last week. Today we're talking about my favorite of the bunch, and I think we can all say the same here. Spider-Man No Way Home, just released 2 months ago from when we're speaking right now. Actually, 2 months ago to the day. This isn't going up on the day, but February 17th, 2 months ago, December 17th, was when we got Spider-Man No Way Home. After such a great build, so much excitement, it definitely delivered. We're talking all about it here today. After a 2-month wait, I can't wait to be breaking this down with you guys. Chris, you're back here on the Twitter machine. You're at BR_Doctor. Chris Mueller. What's going on, my man?
Oh, not much. I kind of wish this movie was somewhere to rewatch because I feel like we're going to end up forgetting some stuff since it's been a couple of months. But
I know, yeah. It's a weird time to review it. I wanted to keep it going with the other movies that are out, and I don't know quickly. Like, we don't know if it's going to be on Disney Plus, right? Like, the other ones went up on Disney Plus?
It will not be. They already said that it's going straight to Stars.
Fucking Stars. Do you have Stars? I don't have Stars.
No, I have Comcast TV, though, so I get Stars like a month free every 6 months for some random promotion, it seems. So, yeah, I'll probably end up doing like the free trial add-on for Prime just to watch it a couple times that first month.
Yeah, there you go. That's one way to look at it. But yeah, no, I think it's. Have they put it out on DVD and digital yet? I know it came out 2 months ago. Probably another couple weeks, right?
It's still in theaters technically because they just broke Avatar's domestic box office record.
Did it really? I didn't know that. When did that happen?
Like 3 days ago, 2 days ago, something pretty recent. Yeah.
Wow. So wait a second. Didn't Avatar get bumped by Endgame, but then Avatar bumped Endgame?
For worldwide gross.
Oh, okay. So this is domestic.
US that we're talking. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good. I'm not an Avatar fan, so I'm glad that got bumped. So that's great to hear.
I've never actually seen Avatar.
I saw it once and I wasn't a fan. I think it's just so overrated. And now they're making. Well, you have a chance, Phil, to watch the next 5 installments because they're coming out with 2, 3, 4, and 5 over the next decade and a half. So you have many chances to catch up. But Phil, you're on here as well. You're on the Twitter machine at PhilDL616. Now you're not an Avatar fan. You haven't seen it yet, but what's going on, dude?
I'm good. Actually, we came very close to James Cameron's Spider-Man, so it's on topic.
Oh, that is wow. That is on topic. That's crazy. And thank God we did not get that, and we got this movie instead. For the first time in a while, we got a special guest here as well. Raph Garcia. You're on Twitter at rgarcia_sports. Obviously, we've all been familiar with you for a long time, but great to finally get in the podcast, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to having a different conversation outside of pro wrestling. Should be pretty fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now,
everybody says.
Yeah, yeah, right. I got to thank you up front, Ref, because it was a couple weeks ago I put out the tweet asking for a title for this show, and I'm going to start using it either with this one or the next one, because after this, we're probably going to talk about Peacemaker and Boba Fett, just to wrap up that stuff before we get back to the regular shit with Moon Knight coming out next month. But you came up with a couple great names, and I really like the next panel, so that's probably what I'm going to settle on, so I got to thank you for that.
Hey, no problem, man. That's what I do all day, every day. It seems like, so no problem at all.
Love the creativity. But let's get into it. Spider-Man No Way Home. What a movie. I mean, I don't even know where to start here, but Chris, where do we even start with this movie? I mean, there's so much to discuss here, and probably stuff that was, I mean, it's been 2 months now, and I just rewatched it recently, but I don't even know where to go from here.
I mean, this movie packed so much in, and it didn't feel overcrowded. Like, I honestly, the more I think about this movie, the more impressed I am at the fact that they pulled off everything that they did. Like, it didn't feel like there was too many villains. It didn't feel like there was too many Spider-Mans. All the callbacks were enjoyable, and even though, like, some people might claim some callbacks felt forced, it's still, like, it's one of the best examples of good fan service that I can think of, next to, like, Endgame, basically.
I mean, kind of going off that, it really did feel like as they were promoting it going in, it was the end game of Spider-Man movies, not just for the Tom Holland films, but for the Andrew Garfield movies, for the Tobey Maguire movies. It was really the culmination of everything Spider-Man for the last 20 years since that first one came out in 01 or 02, I think it was, 20 years ago. It's amazing, and they wrapped up everything perfectly. They got them in there. They didn't give them away in the trailer. We got some villain reveals in the trailer, but not obviously Toby or Andrew, so that payoff was cool. I don't know, just watching this for the first time for me, and I know we discussed this at the time 2 months ago, the weekend in which it came out, I think I saw it on that Friday. Watching it in a packed movie theater just was it was really an Endgame-esque experience with all the reveals and the cool moments, the callbacks, and I think it really was fan service at its best. And it wasn't just a movie that only hardcore fans of Spider-Man can watch. I mean, any Spider-Man or any superhero movie or just people that are looking for a good movie in general, I think will enjoy this film. So I think they did that really, really well. Phil, your overall impressions of Spider-Man No Way Home?
I thought it was really good. I feel like it had a lot of hype behind it because, most people assume that all three Spider-Men were going to be in it. And that's kind of a tough act to do, especially because they didn't really bring all three of them together until the third act. And I thought they handled everything really well.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they did a great job of, since they didn't promote they were going to be in the movie, that I figured because they didn't do that, I mean, they shouldn't have anyway. I'm glad they didn't, regardless of how long they were in the movie. But part of me slightly was worried that they might only have them in there for the final, like you said, the final third act, but like for the final 5 minutes of the movie for the final battle scene or whatever. But they were in there for a good stretch, and the way they were introduced with the portal scene with Ned was awesome. That was really well done. But they really did fill that 2.5 hours perfectly. Like for me, that did not feel like almost 3 hours at all. One of the longest Marvel movies they've done yet, and it did not feel like it whatsoever. What about you, Raph? Your overall thoughts on the movie and how it lived up to the hype?
So the thing I always come out of, like the big Marvel movies, and I always ask myself is how are they going to top that? Like I had that same thought when I saw the first Avengers with a bunch of friends of mine. I had the same thought after Endgame, and I have that same thought here too. Like how are they going to top this moment and this feeling with the next one? Mm-hmm. And somehow when you get to the point where you're like, there's no way they're going to top this moment or this feeling at the end of Endgame where you finally get the shot of everyone there together. Like, there's no way they're going to top that. But then Spider-Man comes out and they effectively did that. So now I'm sitting here asking myself, how are they going to top this moment? But looking at the way the new Doctor Strange trailer looks, I'm like, are they going to do it there? So I came out of Spider-Man really pleased with what I saw, but I always ask, how are they going to top this? Because they continue to find a way to do it.
Yeah, and there's not even a buffer in between either. I mean, it's not like, or we had Endgame, and even if there was no pandemic, we still would have gotten Black Widow and Shang-Chi and Eternals before we got Spider-Man No Way Home. At least we had a couple buffer movies there. We have no buffer here at all. I mean, we got Spider-Man No Way Home, and then the very next movie, albeit 5 months later, but is going to be Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which obviously the trailer was just released a couple days ago from one recording right now at the Super Bowl, and it was awesome. But staying on you, Ref, I just want to talk to you about, like you mentioned, with this movie and how they just kind of keep raising the stakes. We talked previously, Phil, Chris, and I, about the other movies, Shang-Chi, Black Widow, Eternals, blah, blah, blah. Your thoughts on how, do you think this was exactly what Phase 4 needed? I mean, we've had some great shows so far, but I feel like people were waiting for that big, great Marvel movie. And, Shang-Chi was very good. That was easily better, I think, than Black Widow or definitely Eternals. Do you think this is exactly what Phase 4 needed to kind of get people invested again in the MCU stuff and not to feel like it peaked with Endgame?
Definitely. So it's their you still got it moment where everyone was waiting for Marvel to have like a big slide on something so they can sit back and cross their shoulder or cross their arms and say, I told you that people are tired of superhero movies, but this came out and did the exact opposite. I mean, look at the money that they're bringing in, and people are still talking about it to this day. It kind of shows that there's still momentum when it's done right.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 2 months, and like Chris said earlier, I think it's still in theaters as we speak right now, which is wild. Would you concur with that, Phil, as far as it being, not that they peaked with Endgame, but people were kind of worried, Marvel lost its touch going into Phase 4. What more can they do after such a great Endgame movie? And they kind of prove again with this movie. It doesn't have to do with the overall MCU universe. It was just kind of Spider-Man based, but they did such a great movie, and it proved why Marvel's still at the top of their game when it comes to this type of stuff.
Yeah, the funny thing about Endgame is that people were so bought into the Marvel Studios way of doing things now because they had to roll with the characters they had. They didn't have any of their flagship characters. And so some people were like, okay, after Avengers, I'm kind of done because they wrapped up their 10-year story. And I'm like, no, they're just now getting back to their big characters. Like, Spider-Man's one of their main characters. They haven't even touched, like, Fantastic Four or X-Men yet.
Mm-hmm. I mean, kind of going off that, I mean, they already confirmed, I think, in one of these interviews, I don't know if it was Tom or if it was one of the directors or whatever, this is kind of just like, it was like the beginning, not the beginning of the end, but it was really the start of a new chapter for the Spider-Man franchise. Don't they have another 3 movies coming out starring Tom, or just 3 Spider-Man movies in general, or something along those lines?
I think that Tom's still on contract to do more, but I think they announced they're definitely trying to do 3 more.
I'm going to go all over the place here, but I'll start with you, Phil. Your thoughts on the chances that we see Tobey and or Andrew back in some form or fashion, either a Spider-Man movie or like a Venom-related project. What are the odds they're brought back in some form or fashion?
I think the odds of Andrew coming back are a lot higher because Andrew clearly wanted to do more. I mean, even just watching him in this movie, you could see how excited he was to be there. I could see this being like the last hurrah for Tom, and we don't see him again. Mm-hmm. But I could definitely see us seeing Andrew again.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about, I don't know about an Amazing Spider-Man 3, but whether he be incorporated into a different, I don't know if it's a Marvel-related thing, but it could be a Sony thing, or like I said, he could be Venom Spider-Man. I've seen a lot of people speculate that, and I think that's a great idea. Again, like I said, we'll go all over the place here, but Chris, your thoughts on the chances of seeing Tobey and or Andrew again? And I think Andrew, for a lot of people, was one of the highlights of this movie with his performance and just seeing him, because a lot of people recognize Tobey as the Spider-Man, which I would concur with that and I agree, but as someone who wasn't super high myself on the Amazing Spider-Man movies, I thought Andrew was great. It was one of the best parts in the movie, I thought.
Yeah, this was probably the best Andrew Garfield Spider-Man we've seen, honestly. And a little bit of that goes towards the story that they were telling, obviously, but I also think Andrew you could, like Phil said, you could see how happy he was to be there. Like, I don't think that little bit of excitement that we saw in his character, like, he probably didn't have to dig super deep to fake that,
Yeah,
getting
I read
to interact with Tom and Tobey was probably the highlight of his Spider-Man career. Like, he never thought he'd get to play this character again, and then they bring him back for this big 3-man team up. Like, that's crazy. So I'm super happy that fans were so receptive to him and just like are basically calling for another movie, because if you put it in the hands of a good director, he can be a great Spider-Man. We've seen it now.
Yeah, no, I think, like you said, Phil, didn't he say in an interview that like the excitement there was genuine? Like when he called, I think it was Tom and Tobey, and during that scene towards the end when he called them like like that they were his brothers, was that not a genuine moment? Did he confirm that somewhere?
Yeah, I thought I read somewhere that the scene of him, saying "I love you guys" was improv.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, just the way that it came off as genuine. It didn't feel like a scripted line, and I thought that was cool. I mean, all the interaction, honestly, like every little thing, and I'm sure we won't get to it all here today, but every little interaction between all 3 of them, especially towards the end, stuff that I don't think the movie would be like missing anything if they didn't put it in there. But for example, and I'm just going to call them Tobey and Andrew, but the Tobey and Andrew scene where like he was cracking his back and shit like that, I'm sure the movie wouldn't be missing anything if they didn't include that. But it was just such a great scene of them kind of getting to know each other, referencing stuff from other movies. When they mentioned that Tom had, faced a fucking alien in space with Thanos, and then they mentioned, Eddie Brock, obviously Venom, and that's Tobey's Venom from the 3rd movie and whatever. All those interactions were really what made the movie. And like I said, I thought Andrew was one of the best parts about it. To me, along with him, I would say another one of the MVPs, and everyone in the movie was great. Willem Dafoe, bringing him back as Green Goblin, Norman Osborn. I still see memes 2 months later with that he's on sabbatical, and I see that meme all the time on Twitter and shit. It's great. Willem Dafoe really knocked it out of the park here. What were your thoughts on his performance, Chris?
Oh man, he was the best part of this movie, honestly. Like, I mean, we've talked about this in a few different places. Like, he literally was acting circles around these guys, and being able to see his face the whole time and not have that mask hiding his performance really added to the insanity of the character, because Willem Dafoe just looks insane whenever he wants to. And man, it was just that scene right after he turns in the apartment and they're fighting on the hallway, and Peter jumps on his shoulders and is just pounding on him, and Willem just smiling back at him. Like, that to me was one of the most definitive scenes we've seen in any movie for the Green Goblin. Like, that right there was head and shoulders above anything he had done before as that character. Just as far as making him look dangerous and intimidating. Like, just laughing at him as he's being punched in the face by a guy with super strength. It just made him look nuts, and I loved it.
Yeah, no, I was skeptical going in that they wouldn't have him in the mask a ton. And we got the mask. It's not like we didn't get the Green Goblin mask at all. We did very briefly when he first resurfaced. But, I was actually kind of glad in retrospect, like you said, that they didn't have him wear it, because he wore it for most of the first movie and whatever, the first Spider-Man movie. But yeah, his facials were great, and that one scene, like you said, where he was getting punched in the face by Tom was just awesome. And like he just completely unfazed, no selling it, so to speak. It was just fantastic. And I'm glad that, he didn't meet his fate. They had a lot of twists and turns in this movie that I thought that you didn't see coming. Like when he stabbed Toby, you're thinking, oh shit, here's the sacrifice, like here's the sad moment. And he stabbed him, but he didn't die. I mean, neither did Norman. And I don't know, it was cool. We already saw him die once before, obviously in the first Sam Raimi movie, so I thought it would have been silly had he died again in a different way, but I thought it was cool, honestly, and I'll get to that in a second because I thought that was another thing worth talking about. But before I do, Phil, your thoughts on Willem Dafoe and the rest of the villains that really rounded out this movie and that added a lot to the plot?
Man, I think before this movie, I would say that Alfred Molina was the best Spider-Man villain. Mm-hmm. I think now I'm coming around to it's totally Green Goblin. I feel like just across two movies, he's the best at this point. I feel like he was the best villain in this movie by far. I feel like he was probably the best actor in this movie by far. He killed it. And I would also say that Jamie Foxx was a lot better than I thought he was going to be. He was great.
Yeah,
I actually wanted to piggyback on that because I was going to say Jamie as well too. I think he really overperformed in this position. That he definitely stood out to me too.
Yeah, no, Jamie was awesome. I thought all of them were really good, especially I completely forgot about Alfred Molina, and I don't know how I forgot about it, but him coming back as Doc Ock and his face turn, so to speak, happening sooner than the others I thought was cool. But Jamie Foxx was perfect. And again, he is another one where I think a lot like Andrew, I would hope that we see him again, maybe in his new reformed version or whatever, as a good guy, so to speak. His development there, not wanting to go back to what it was before, feeling like a loser, I thought was great. Kind of going off of that, I thought the whole idea of this movie, which I don't think was revealed at all in the trailers going into it. We didn't know exactly why the villains were in it until we watched it. The whole idea that instead of trying to kill off all these bad guys, which is typical superhero stuff 101, that Tom's Spider-Man wanted to redeem them all, I thought was really well done. And I thought it was a great way. I mean, I don't know if that's more realistic, but it just seemed like it was a great way to kind of cap off all their respective stories, send them back to their own universes, kind of as reformed people. We don't get to see that, obviously. They kind of fade off and that's it, but I thought that was I thought it was really cool, and we didn't have to see anyone get killed off or whatever, which I thought was well done. So, Raph, your thoughts on what they kind of did with the villains and the direction with where they took this movie? Was it what you were expecting, and your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think they did an excellent job with making a movie about them in a way that made you want to see them get out of the situation and not be killed off at the end. Like, you do want to see what happened when they were sent back to where they came from. Did they change course, and does that necessarily change those universes at the same time? So I really do appreciate what they did with that group. The whole time I was waiting for the sixth villain per se, because we got 5 of the Sinister Six. I just knew something was, for a minute there, I thought that Aunt May was going to be the chameleon or something like that. Like, something had to happen for us to get the actual 6th villain, but we didn't. So that's something I was a little bit disappointed in a sense. But what they did with everyone else was fantastic. Did
you think, you mentioned Aunt May, and we'll get to her too. Like I said, there's a lot to get to here. But as far as the 6th villain, we saw the whatever it's called, the art that came out from the movie, as far as shit they were going to do, but they didn't end up doing. Mysterio. Did you think, Raph, that he could have been the 6th person after kind of the I mean, he died at the end of Far From Home, but there is a way that you could twist it to where it wasn't real and he's not actually dead, and there's still a chance they bring him back. Did you think that he could have been the sixth villain, and are you happy or disappointed that he wasn't in this one?
He could have been in that spot. He wasn't someone I was looking for per se. I thought they were going to do something with maybe Venom or anything like that. Like we did get a little bit of a clip of him at the end, but I wasn't necessarily looking specifically for Mysterio to kind of jump out as that sixth guy.
Yeah, I feel like just because he kind of was wrapped up at the end of the last movie, to bring him back already, I don't know. I wouldn't have had an issue. The Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio in the last movie was great, but I don't know. I just feel like focusing on the villains of the other universes and the other franchises I thought was the way to go. It's not like we saw Vulture. I don't know. I think the way that they did it instead was really well done. Your thoughts, Phil, on kind of what they did with the villains and rehabbing them and in the story they took here, and if you were disappointed or if you were hoping to see someone else join the Sinister Six, so to speak, as Raph was talking about.
The only time I really thought Beck was coming back was in that scene where Peter's spider sense went off and he couldn't tell what it was, which that scene was really great, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to be Beck in that scene, but of course we got the Norman reveal in that. I really liked what they did with the villains because I think it tied back to the other Spider-Man so well towards the end, because you just saw how a lot of their biggest mistakes were not being able to help their villains. So I thought that was a great way to tie the whole story back. Like, I mean, even getting that Easter egg of Toby saying, man, I've been thinking about how to cure a goblin for a long time because he always regretted killing him. I mean, really, because that mistake ruined his life, kind of. It ruined Harry's life, so I got it. It made perfect sense.
Yeah, that was well done. What about you, Chris, as far as where they went with the villains and if we were going to see Mysterio or if you were disappointed and whatnot?
I never really held out any kind of hope for Mysterio because I figure we would have heard if Jake Gyllenhaal was on set, just like we did with the other guys.
Yeah.
I was hoping for just a random quick scene of Andrew Garfield discovering that the Rhino had been pulled through as well, and just quickly like dispatching him in like 5 seconds. Being like, oh, you're here too, webs him up, and then just runs away. Like, I think that would have been hilarious, but I get why they only used those 5. Like, the Sinister Six idea, I feel like Sony wants to save the concept of the Sinister Six for another movie, because they obviously were trying to set it up with the Amazing Spider-Man movies and never got around to it. So I heard the director actually saying, like, well, if you want to count Venom as the sixth, you could. He just wasn't in the fight. Yeah, I don't know. But I actually kind of... I liked most of what they did with the villains. I mean, Thomas Hayden Church's character and Lizard, like, you know, they had a little bit to do, but not much. The real strength villains were Molina, Foxx, and Dafoe. And Phil, you were right. Jamie Foxx and Raph too. Like, this was the best we've seen of him as Electro, and it's because they just let Jamie Foxx do Jamie Foxx stuff. He wasn't playing some weirdo, obsessive Spider-Man fan who's talking to himself in his apartment and throwing a birthday party for himself. Like,
I forgot he did that in that movie. They really tried to lean into the Riddler and Batman Forever stuff with him in that movie, and it just did not work.
Yeah, and in this, he was cool, he was calm, and legitimately funny, too. Like, I think the last time we talked about this, Phil, you brought up the Lego line when he was just like, let me just ask you a question. Those your Legos? Like,
yeah, that was
just
great.
All these little touches and little things he did were outstanding. One of my favorite parts of the movie is right after they get done fighting him, and he's just like, so you guys are just really going to stand there like I'm not butt-ass naked? And Sandman's like, well, I am.
Yeah.
Man, I will say, like, I do agree that the Lizard is just there to fill a spot, but I love that they more than once lampooned the fact that his plot is just so basic. It's like, yeah, just want to turn everybody into lizards.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was one of the other great Jamie lines in the movie where he's like, man, I can help you with that. He was like, let me guess, turn me into a lizard?
The banter was probably the best part of the movie, I think, between everybody. I mean, between the villains amongst themselves and the Spider-Mans as well.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, they just did a great job with it. Like, there was that one part, I think, where Ned and MJ were talking to Tom Spider-Man, and they were like, where the villains were, like they were in their pods, and then you kind of see Doc Ock in the background. I forgot what he said. He's like, hey, get me the hell out of here, or something like that. There was like a pause in between what he said, and it was just hysterical. So I don't know if the chemistry that all these people in the cast had was great. This is completely unrelated to what you guys were just talking about, but because Raph mentioned it earlier, I forgot. Thoughts on Aunt May dying? I was not expecting that. I guess people were predicting that going in. I didn't really have any expectations, really, aside from Toby and Andrew showing up. But Chris, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on Aunt May dying and the way that she died, and if you were a fan of it at all.
I mean, I love the scene. Like, I think they did an excellent job with it, and giving her the big line, with great power comes great responsibility, or however she phrased it. I liked that. And then that carried a little weight later when the other two Spider-Men were like, oh, Uncle Ben said that. And it was like, for Peter, the formative person in his life isn't Uncle Ben in this universe. It's Aunt May.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, Marissa Tomei is one of those actresses that I just love in everything. So I'm never going to be happy to see her character killed off.
For sure.
But yeah, I feel like she had more to do in this movie than in some of the previous ones that she's been in, and they did a good job with the character. Some of her lines were really great too, and she's just like, would you like some water? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, fresh or salt? He's like, what? Because you're an octopus. Like, just little stuff like that got me. But yeah, I really enjoyed Marissa Tomei's performance in this, and even though the way she died was a little weird, because she gets up and you think she's going to be okay, and then all of a sudden she's not. It was good that they didn't go something super violent, like her getting just straight up cut in half by the glider, or something crazy. Like, it did add a little bit more weight to Peter, slowly realizing what was happening to her and realizing, oh, you're not okay. You're actually dying, right now.
Yeah, no, I thought the way they did it was great. I was, again, like I said, it was something that took me by surprise. I thought, if anything, maybe Happy Hogan would be killed off. But no, getting the line in there was great, and they went back to it, like you said, with the other Spider-Mans later on. It was well done. I think it really does add to, his character development and add more stakes to what he does going forward, considering that both Toby's Spider-Man and Andrew's Spider-Man both lost someone. And we didn't really see that with Tom because, obviously Uncle Ben's not in the picture. He hasn't been in the picture. He has hardly been acknowledged. We haven't really seen him lose anyone up to this point, up until now, so it makes those stakes that much more serious going forward, and now he's kind of on his own, as we saw at the end of the movie. Your thoughts on the killing off of Aunt May, Phil, and how you thought they executed it?
I thought they executed it very well. I think we've had 3 Tom scenes where he cries, and he gets me because he's such a good actor, and I was like, you're not going to get me this time, Tom, and he totally got me. I thought they handled her death pretty well, all the way up to I thought she was going to make it at one point, and then when he pulls his glove up and has the blood on it, I was like, yeah, she's definitely dying.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I thought it looked like for a second they could salvage her, but it didn't happen. What about you, Raph? Sorry, go ahead, Phil.
I was just going to say that I think some people are going to point out that she dies very similar to the way Miles' mom dies in a comic. Mm-hmm. And there's some people that think some of the stuff from this movie takes a lot from the Miles comic. I mean, Ned is clearly Genki. I think some people are going to notice that. But other than that, I thought they did a good job of not, showing us Uncle Ben get shot for the third time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I thought that was good. What about you, Raph? And I know you mentioned Aunt May before. Maybe she comes back as the sixth villain, which obviously didn't happen. But your thoughts on the way that she was handled here in this movie?
I think she was handled very well. I think someone just mentioned that she had a lot more to do, which was really important. Mm-hmm. And the best description I've heard of this movie so far was that this is Tom's origin story as Peter Parker. If you look at the way it ends, like where he basically has nothing, and he is that broke Peter Parker that we all know of, especially like from the cartoons back in the 90s. Like he's that Peter Parker now. He has to kind of start all over. So I think her role and her death and everything that he lost by the end of the movie really tied in well together to put him in a place where we don't know what's going to happen next with him. We know he's still going to try to be Superman, but he's going to Spider-Man, but he's going to be that one that's scratching and scraping by every month, the one that we know of and have seen like for years.
Yeah, no, I love that you put it that way. Like you said, I had seen some other people say that something similar to that, where this is kind of like his origin story, which is crazy to say after all the other Avengers and Civil War and other Spider-Man movies that Tom Holland Spider-Man has been in, but it really is, and I think what they do going forward will really tell the tale of what this character is going to be, and it looks like Phil had confirmed earlier, that it looks like he will be in other stuff. I'm not sure what that will be exactly, and now that the world forgot who Spider-Man is, or that he is Spider-Man. I mean, obviously he still exists, but people just don't remember that he's Spider-Man. I think it's interesting. So going off of that again, like I said, there's a lot of just random shit I want to get to, but because I think Phil, you would just mention it, but I want to talk about this. This is a small thing, but they actually mentioned the possibility of there being a Miles Morales in this universe, because they had mentioned the idea of a black Spider-Man, which was great. That one line in there between Electro or Jamie Foxx's character and Andrew, which was awesome. How was your thoughts on that, Raph, and where do you think they go with it from there? And if we will indeed get a live-action Miles Morales at some point in the MCU?
Oh man, I think if we were getting a live action Miles Morales, I think we would have already gotten it.
Okay.
I think that we are going to stick with the animated version of him, and that'll be what we get. And it's so good. I don't think they want to mess with that right now, because anything that they would do live action would definitely be compared to that version of it, and I don't think we will, to be honest with you. Which I'm not sure if I'm upset with, because that cartoon excelled so much further than I thought it would, that I might be just okay with that.
Oh yeah, no, the movie was amazing, and obviously we're getting the second one, or part one of the second one, coming up, I think later on this year, I think in October. What about you, Phil? Your thoughts on the mention of Miles Morales in this movie, and if he could, or if you would even want to see him be brought into the MCU in live action form at some point?
I would love to see live action Miles. I think that that's far off for now, because they've done the Into the Spider-Verse movies. I don't think that they would want to do two versions of the character at the same time. And then, like I've told people for years, like, Marvel didn't wait all this time to get Spider-Man back to not use Peter Parker. Like, there was no way they were going to make, like, two movies and go, all right, well, we're done with Peter Parker now. Like, no, they've been trying to get this character back for almost 10 years, more than that. So I'm fine with what they're doing. If they want to give us another trilogy of Peter movies and then move on, I would be great with that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. I like you said, I don't know if it's likely that we see. I know they've mentioned him in the first Homecoming movie, but I don't know if it's likely that we see Miles Morales at this point anyway. I think we might see him at some point, but at least right now, while the two movies are going on, Into the Spider-Verse and this franchise, it might lessen the chances a little bit. What about you, Chris? And the mention again, like I said, of Miles Morales and the likelihood of him being in the MCU at some point.
I'm still curious how long this whole Marvel Sony thing is going to last, because I could see them doing a live action one, but not in the MCU necessarily. Like, let's say they, determine, okay, Tom's run is done and we're going to do something else, then they start up the live action Miles maybe. I'd love to see a live action Miles in the MCU. I'm always a little skeptical about this Sony Marvel relationship, because it seems like every couple of years you hear, oh, okay, Sony's going to take it back, and then Tom Holland convinces Kevin to fight for it, and they work something out. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I thought the line from Jamie Foxx, though, was great when he was just like, man, you got that cool suit. Like, I just thought you were black. Like,
Yeah.
And then he just was just like, oh, well, he's the multiverse. There's got to be a black Spider-Man out there. It's like, that was totally intentional and very well placed, because it didn't feel like an egregious call out. Like, yeah, we're referencing Miles, guys. Like,
yeah.
It just kind of felt like something Jamie Foxx's character might say. So, yeah, I really liked the way that they handled that. But like Raph was saying, and even Phil, like the cartoon was just so good that I could see Sony being like, let's not, put our eggs in too many baskets, and let's just do the animated stuff for a little while and then move over to live action once we're kind of done with the Spider-Verse movies, whenever that is. But these animated movies take so long to make that they may not want to take that long, because, man, that Spider-Man movie is like so many different kinds of animation. Like, I don't know if you guys have read the thing about it, but each time he jumps into a new universe in this next movie, it's going to be a completely different animation style.
Oh, wow.
So, like, we're probably going to see him, like, in an anime form, and then he'll probably end up in Spider-Pig's universe, so he'll look like a Looney Tune for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's going to be nuts, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'd be fine if they waited a while to bring Miles into live action, because I do think that the animated movies are, like, the first one was so good that I don't see how the sequels could be anything but good if it's the same creative team.
Yeah.
So I'd like them to let those movies stand on their own, because that first one's, like, in many ways is a literal work of art. Like, it's a beautiful film. It's so well animated, and it's just so creative. And yeah, I don't know if I want to see them, like, we're going to have like 4 live action Batmans this year. We don't need that with other characters yet.
Yeah, no, we don't need to be seeing that with Marvel at this point. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the next one. Like I said, I think it comes out in October, so I don't know if they put out a date for when part 2 of Into the Spider-Verse 2 comes out, but I know that one comes out a little bit later on this year, so that'll likely put the brakes on that for a little while as far as Miles Morales goes in the live action MCU. But what does the future hold for Tom Holland Spider-Man? You talked a little bit about more movies and how long this agreement's going to last. Beyond that, though, from like a storyline standpoint, we saw at the end of this movie, everyone forgets that he's Peter Parker. I like that we didn't get the typical happy ending, MJ remembered and Ned remembered, but everyone else forgot. Like, that would have been too clean cut, and I think it wouldn't have really left any open loose ends and shit. But I'm glad that we did get some loose ends, because it creates a lot of interesting possibilities, for the future. Like, I guess, obviously none of the Avengers remember him, and how will he make her remember him? Like, will she get those memories back? Will he have to, like, start all over again? We got a little bit of that, a tease of that at the end of this movie, but we still don't know where they're going to go from here. So, again, beyond the obvious discussion of whether this Sony Marvel agreement will continue beyond the next movie or not, where do you think this is going, Chris? And do you think they have a bigger plan here? Like, do you think they know where they're going, or do you think they're kind of making it up as they go along as far as where the Tom Holland character goes from here, with everyone forgetting that he was Spider-Man?
I mean, I think they probably have a roadmap, whether or not they stick to it. I mean, Marvel probably changes stuff on the fly when they see reactions to things.
Mm-hmm.
So, for all we know, they already have Tom's, like, next 2 appearances figured out, or whatever it might be. I just think that now that we have, like, the broke Peter Parker living on his own, he has nobody to help him, no resources. He's got this new homemade suit that's basically just spandex by the look of it. Like, now is the time to start incorporating some of those storylines from the comic books that are so iconic, like, or not storylines necessarily, but character traits. Like, turn him into the photographer finally, like, give him that. I don't necessarily need him to work for J. Jonah Jameson. That they can work apart if they want him to do that, but, like, having him and J. Jonah Jameson having that feud again, like, that would be great just because, God, what's his name? I can't think of the actor right now, but he's just so good as Jonah. Like, he's perfect. He's literally, nobody else is ever going to define that character more than him because he's done it so much. Like, he's voiced the character in a bunch of cartoons.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Like, pretty much any portrayal of him for the last 20 or so years has been that guy. God, why can I not think of his name?
J.K. Simmons.
That's it. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that this is an opportunity for them to maybe bring in some of those things from the comics that are a little more familiar to Spider-Man. And because I think he'll probably be in whatever the next Avengers type team up project is too, whether it's a Young Avengers or it's just Avengers 5 or whatever they decide to call it. I think he'll probably be in that. He'll probably have one more solo movie, and then beyond what they do from there, I have no idea. But I like where they left the character, and I don't remember who I saw say this. It might have even been you, Phil, the last time we talked about this. I can't remember, but it's like Spider-Man's the only character that, like, you can end the movie with him broke and alone, and it's still kind of a happy ending.
Yeah, as long as we see him swinging around, I think that's all that matters, right? Just the visual alone was awesome.
But, like, so many things get taken from him in this movie, and it still kind of ends on a high note. Like, it's crazy how they managed to walk that line.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it kind of, I mean, it's so different than the other two installments in this series. I feel like ending on the note that they did was so true to, like, the original Spider-Man movies with Garfield and Holland, with Maguire. I just feel like they did that with the original ones, and, you know, not everyone doesn't want a happy ending, but I don't know, I just kind of I feel like it leaves the door open for what they might do next. And it is, I mean, he essentially got what he wanted. I mean, again, the whole point was that no one would remember that he's Spider-Man. He didn't want to have to live two lives anymore. That was the whole issue. And now he doesn't have to, and now he's feeling the repercussions of that. So it's like one of those be careful what you wish for type of things. So very curious to see where they go from here with it. What about you, Phil? What do you think the future holds for, I mean, again, real life Tom Holland's character, I get that. But as far as, you know, Peter Parker, Tom Holland, where do you think he goes from here as far as what they do with the character?
I think the next time he crosses over with another group, it's going to be Fantastic Four. It just makes too much sense. His debut is in the Fantastic Four comic. Like they're his closest relationship outside of Avengers, and I would actually argue he has a closer relationship with them than the Avengers. Johnny's his best friend, and John Watt is directing Fantastic Four. It just makes too much sense.
So does that mean is there a chance that they could be in the Baxter Building, maybe? Or not in the Baxter. The Baxter Building is the old Avengers Tower?
I would love that. I'm not sure, like, because they didn't show the old Avengers Tower at all in this movie, which I thought was interesting. But, yeah, I definitely think he's going to get another solo movie or two, but I could definitely see him showing up in Fantastic Four at some point. I
want the black and white suit in live action so bad. The Future Force, is that what it's called? The Future Force suit?
Future Foundation?
That's it, yeah. When he was actually, like, kind of in the Fantastic Four for a little bit, that black and white suit is so nice. I want to see that in live action so bad.
Yeah, I really like those suits. They started using that, and they did the Future Foundation in the comic, if I remember, right after Johnny died, which then we find out that he didn't really die, which...
Of course, because nobody stays dead except Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but man, when I really think about just how brilliant this trilogy is, I mean, they gave us the first movie where all he wanted to do was be an Avenger, and he got that. And he sacrificed so much to be an Avenger, and he lost so much. So by the end of his trilogy, it's like, all right, he got everything that he wanted. And he even said in this movie, like, I'm the most famous person in the world, and I'm still broke. And then at the end of this movie, like, he lost kind of everything. He lost his mentor. He lost his aunt. He lost all of his friends. He lost all of his cool gadgets and cool new suits. He lost everything.
Yeah, no, he lost everything, and it still ended on a note where that I was satisfied with, which is crazy. Your thoughts, Raph, on how the movie kind of ended and where this leaves things for the future?
Yeah, I have no idea where it's going to go for the future, and I think that's that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different. I'm sitting here thinking, listening to everybody talk about that, and I'm like, where did the '90s cartoon end off? Where did some of the best arcs in the various comics end off? And there's just so many different places where it could go. And I mean, Marvel's doing so much right now that nothing's almost off limits. Like, I don't know if anyone has been watching like a lot of the breakdowns of the Doctor Strange trailer, but there's talks that one of the universes may be an animated universe. How do we know that that's not tied into one of the old Spider-Man cartoons, and maybe that's where he pops up, or maybe that's how they end up bringing Miles into the MCU through that avenue? Like, there's so much there that we actually have no idea where it could go, and I think that that's probably the most exciting part of it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Didn't they say, because this was supposed to come out after Doctor Strange, I thought I read that they changed it to Ned because America Chavez was going to bring the other Spider-Man in before.
Oh, interesting. I didn't hear that.
And they changed it because, of course, like the schedule changed, and so people wouldn't know who America Chavez was yet because she wasn't introduced yet.
Oh, wow. Okay. That makes sense. Because I didn't know that it was supposed to come out after Multiverse of Madness. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was supposed to come out last year. Remember, it's supposed to come out in 2022.
Oh, wow, that's wild. Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm interested. Maybe, do you think that might have been why they did so many reshoots recently?
Yeah, I think it is. Because, I mean, even if you look at some of the concept art, America Chavez is in some of the concept art for Spider-Man.
Oh, wow. Well, there you go. Yeah, I guess I'm curious what the movie would have looked like with her involved and how much different it actually would have been, considering how great the movie already was. And kind of on that note, I think we kind of talked about the major points, and we can get any little stuff here that we forgot. But, Chris, anything else about this movie that you want to bring up as we wind down here? Or just how great it was, I guess.
One character we really didn't talk very much about is Happy. I love Jon Favreau in this movie so much. So many little things he did in this movie were funny. Like, when Peter's talking to MJ late at night, and Happy's, like, asleep in the room, and then he realizes that he's not actually asleep.
Yeah, that was great.
It's just that little moment of him with the sleep apnea mask on, and Peter's like, oh, MJ says hi, and he's just like, hello. Like, just so defeated. But, and then that scene at the end where, like, you realize he doesn't remember Peter. And, like, the two of them pulled that off so nice, because that's another thing he lost is, like, Happy was a friend and mentor, too, and now that's gone. And, yeah, I just think that Jon Favreau being part of the MCU still is really great, because he's one of the last things connecting us to that first Iron Man movie still. Like, you basically have him and Fury. Yeah. And Fury was a cameo. Like, Fury was just the post-credit scene, which at the time, they were like, we don't even know if this is going to lead to anything. Like, let's just throw this in and see what happens. Yeah. It's crazy how, when you look back at the original, like, first 3 or 4 movies in the MCU leading up to the Avengers, like, they had no idea if any of this was going to work, and they were just throwing shit out and seeing what stuck. And the fact that it's grown into what it has is incredible, because if you go back and look on the internet and find some of the original articles, like, they're basically talking about, like, oh, Marvel is teaming up with Paramount to make some movies about these characters that you might not be familiar with, and they give these breakdowns. And you read these articles and you realize, like, wow, there was once a period in time where the general public had no idea who Iron Man was because he was a B-level comic character. Mm-hmm. Like, Iron Man before those movies was not what he is in the comics now. Like, those movies are solely responsible for Iron Man becoming as important as he is now.
Yeah.
And then it's like Chris Evans... after the Human Torch, you're going to cast him as Captain America. So many people thought that was going to be a huge flop. So just to see where all this stuff has come, and now we're getting movies like this. Like, whoever thought we would get 3 fucking Spider-Men in a live-action movie together at the same time, with the original actors reprising their role as the villains, like if you had said that 10 years ago, as like that's what's going to happen, people would be like, "You're out of your mind. Go fuck yourself."
Yep. Yeah, most definitely. And they pulled it off perfectly. And I think Raph summed it up perfectly before, where it feels like, okay, it can't possibly get better than this. And then they drop that trailer for Multiverse of Madness on Sunday, and you get all excited all over again. And that's not even to mention all the shows that we're getting in between that have been also very good. Closing thoughts, Phil, on Far, I almost said Far From Home, No Way Home, on No Way Home, and how it kind of lived up to expectations and whatnot for you.
Man, I just think that the Homecoming trilogy, if that's what we're calling it, is just going to go down as one of the best Marvel trilogies ever. Like, I think the way they handled all of the character stuff for 3 movies, I think people are not really paying that much attention to it because we're just stuck in, hey, we got 3 Spider-Man in one movie. But I feel like this definitively made Tom the best Spider-Man. Like, I feel like his arc throughout these 3 movies is really good. And I feel like it's kind of funny to say, but it's kind of underrated.
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's an argument to be made there for this trilogy being underrated. And yeah, I mean, that just as a complete package and a way to close this out. And I mean, I don't know, just not just to close out this trilogy, but just every Spider-Man related thing they've done over the last 20 years. They did amazingly well. What about you, Raph? Your closing thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home?
Yeah, I definitely think is my favorite Marvel movie so far to date, and I agree with Phil that Tom he has shown that he's the best Spider-Man so far. It's funny because what Chris was just saying about not knowing what this was, if we look back 10, 15 years when it started, there's one person that probably goes and looks at those articles too, and that's probably Ed Norton, because I guarantee you he kicks himself every single day for what he did to his torpedoing his whole career, arguing for more money.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's just a great way. It's a crazy way to cap it off. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do, not only with the Spider-Man franchise, but just everything that Marvel does going forward coming out of this. I mean, this really did open the doors. If we can see, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, if they can, I mean, obviously money talks, but if they can get them back for something like this, and now we're hearing Charles Xavier's voice in the Multiverse of Madness trailer, we might obviously see him very likely in this next movie. That literally opens the doors for any possible cameo going forward from other movies, and there's talk of Tom Cruise being in it as Iron Man, as a playoff of him being Iron Man originally. There's a lot of stuff they can get into, and I think it really stems from this film. They made it possible. But yeah, this has been great, guys. I was looking forward to this for a while. I've been looking forward to breaking down No Way Home for quite some time, and this was terrific. But next time we speak, hopefully, Chris, I know we want to talk about at some point the Book of Boba Fett the show that just wrapped up recently, so we'll probably talk about that on the next episode. But in the meantime, Chris, you're on the Twitter machine at BR_Dr. Phil. You're on Twitter at PhilDL616, and Raph, you're on Twitter as well at R_Garcia_sports. Raph, I forgot to mention this earlier. I do this with everyone that comes on the show, and I completely forgot to ask you, but where people can find you beyond just the Twitter machine, everything you do, obviously you're always busy, you do great work. Spit some of that stuff out for us.
Yeah, definitely start with my Twitter. That's where I promote everything there, but you can always catch me. Thankfully, they don't let me run the Twitter profile for Daily DDT, but that's where you'll find majority of my content there, and MMA ratings as well, too. You can catch me there, too.
Awesome, fantastic. Raph, thanks a lot for coming on, man. This has been great. Hopefully we can get you on for another episode down the road.
Of course, I'll gladly hop on.
And hopefully by that point I'll be calling up with the next panel because I love that title.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Raph. Phil, Chris, thanks again, guys. I look forward to talking to you in the next one.
Thanks.